We mostly work in a variety of sectors, but a lot of our food work sits in our climate and environment portfolio, and very excited personally and professionally in this topic, and the idea of the one state, two systems, and how often, I think, especially in the Bay, a lot of the food communities can be very disconnected, and so excited to bring together folks who might not always cross paths. Maybe pass to Sakina.
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Sakina Zaidi. I work with Timber Collective here in San Francisco, and I'm just excited to have this group together. I think one state, two systems could apply to a lot of topics in the Bay Area. So really looking forward to getting all of your thoughts, getting all of these people in one room, and then maybe having this be the start of many discussions or a series of discussions. But welcome and happy to have you all here.
Great, thank you both. And a big thanks to Camber Collective for helping to host and sponsor this event. And I wanted to run through a quick thing for agenda. So we're in the intros and welcome, and then we're gonna move to a meet and greet. So a quick sort of like one-on-one, one-on-two breakout room, so you can understand what food community everybody's a part of, get to know each other. And then we'll move into the panel discussion and then a Q&A. But we want to invite you to put your questions in the chat too, so we can make sure to address them all throughout the day. So thanks so much. And yeah, I will quickly want to run a poll to see who we have in the room here with us. So let me just launch this poll for you all. If you haven't used it before, it's going to show up on your screen. So it will just ask you what part or parts of the food system you're most interested in. And you can check several of these. So go ahead and pick the ones that you are most interested in.
I gotta be thankful because I know someone lost their life today. And so every moment I endeavor to live life the righteous way, to serve with a sense of purpose and let love light the way.
Thanks for participating.
Even if I die today, that's just the price I pay. Just know I try to be kind and seek the divine every night and day. Gratitude
awesome.
for the sunrise.
Looks like we have like 80–90% of people participating.
Gratitude for the moonlight.
We see a lot of people here from like the food production side of things, interested in farming or agriculture, maybe making some new products, value-added things. Cool. Thank you all for participating. I'm going to share the results so you know who's here. So yeah, we've got lots in the food production side of things, some people interested in distribution, maybe like how food gets to people, access of food, and then a handful of folks throughout processing and marketing and food waste recovery. So excited for you all to meet each other and keep this conversation going. Thanks for sharing. Yeah, and then whoever put themselves as other parts of the food system, happy to hear about that too. Thanks all. I'm going to stop sharing the results and we will get you into the breakout rooms to learn more about each other.
Great. So while Gianna's configuring breakout rooms, well, the impetus for the breakout rooms is part of the networking and getting to know people who are maybe in the food community that you weren't aware of before. And so as a prompt to kind of get conversation started, the question we wanted you all to answer is, who is your food community? And left it quite open-ended, and you can describe that in any way, shape, or form you feel is appropriate or necessary. So whether that be in your work or how you shop or where you shop or how you consume food or all of the above. Just excited to hear the different ways in which people answer the question, and hopefully you will absolutely will meet somebody quite cool. So whenever you're ready, Gianna. More people coming in. There's always a seconds of technical difficulties, no matter how much you prep.
Yeah, sorry, I'm assigning you all to rooms right now. So hopefully you should, you'll get the prompt here soon. Thanks, Sarah.
I was surprised by the spread of distribution across the poll that we had earlier. I think it's very cool that like we covered almost every single area of the chain.
Yeah, totally. All right, so we're gonna put you in rooms. You're gonna be with, it'll be probably 2 to 3 people. Hopefully you enjoy meeting everybody. So I will open the rooms now. And yeah, you have about like 5 minutes to chat with each other. Hey, welcome back. Hi, everyone. Hope you got to meet somebody new. Yay, welcome back, everybody.
If anyone is interested in sharing one thing they learned or something cool that they heard or different framing while they were out, while people come back, welcome you to do that in the chat too.
Being recorded.
Awesome, welcome back, everybody. Hope you got some time to meet new folks and just get chatting. That's what today's all about. Yeah, so we're excited for our panelists to get the conversation going, and I just wanted to pass it over to them to introduce themselves a little bit. And so, yeah, we are going to pass it over to Ada and James and Perry, and I'm gonna let them introduce themselves. I'm gonna spotlight them. All right,
Oh, nice. I'll go first. Hi, everybody. I'm Ada Cuadrado Medina. I'm the digital media manager at Real Food, Real Stories. So Real Food, Real Stories, just quickly, is, here's the long version, an arts integrated culture change organization cultivating place-based communities across geographies through storytelling, media, arts, and cultural strategy initiatives. It's a big mouthful. Most people in the Bay Area know us mostly as a from our live storytelling gatherings and from our story slams, where we have food change makers from across the spectrum, farmers, people who do value added CPG stuff, people who are chefs, people who have started all sorts of organizations in community gardens and spaces, sharing their personal narratives with the community. Our big, hairy goal is to democratize food culture. My role in this organization is basically to design and manage the digital spaces. So it's been especially sort of in the spotlight during the pandemic, since we're all online more often than maybe we would have been. So my philosophy, and I'm a child of diaspora, and I moved around a lot as a kid, is that we need to create connection wherever we can, and we need to create a sense of inquisitive play, especially in these digital spaces. So whenever we're online, our presence is all about trying to get people to connect and really understand each other. Oh, thanks for putting the little website on there. I appreciate that. I don't want to take up too much time, so maybe I'll leave it at that. We'll talk a little bit more later.
Thanks, Ada. I'm going to pass it over to James to introduce.
And then.
Hi. So I am James Nakahara. I'm one of a team of farm business advisors that work with Kitchen Table Advisors. We support farmers and ranchers in and around the Bay Area with business skills development. It could look like access to capital. It could look like navigating grants and loans, work-life balance, and more. I'm based out of Santa Cruz. I support North Santa Cruz County, the San Mateo Coast Side, and the East Bay. And KTA really is oriented around supporting farmers and ranchers from historically marginalized communities, be that LGBTQ plus or native Spanish speakers, immigrants, if yeah, and to say a little bit more about the work we do, in addition to our business advising, we also work on these kind of larger ecosystems projects, which could look like supporting collaborative endeavors in the form of food hubs or kind of regional support infrastructure, which can look a lot of different ways, shared transportation, all kinds of farmer education, stuff like that. So very excited to be here and have this discussion with you all today. I'll pass it over to Perry.
Thank you, James. I'm Perry. I'm the program director at Food System 6 Accelerator. We are a national business accelerator for food and agriculture companies, but we were founded and are based in the Bay Area, but we serve innovations all across the country. We've been around for about 6 years. We've served over, there's over 50 different innovations in our portfolio. The innovations have raised over $30 million. So many different types of innovations, from different kinds of tractors to microbial seeds to BIPOC focused nonprofit advocacy groups in farming. So we run the spectrum from nonprofits to for-profit entities and everything in between. And we really support innovations that are looking for system level change. So how can we really move our food system to one that is more just and regenerative? And all of our innovations are deeply rooted in impact. So our lens on the food and agriculture innovation scene is certainly one of how can we democratize the access to capital? How can we democratize the ownership structures that exist in the food and agriculture system? And how can we really center the entrepreneur in the whole process of as they grow and scale their innovation? And I just want to say one thing that Ada said, that was the inquisitive play, which I love those two words for so many reasons, but I like to think of the really early stages of entrepreneurship as inquisitive play. Like, how might this look? How might our world be if I could create this or design this in this way? So I love those two words. I hope that I can use them and share them with entrepreneurs in the future as, something inspiring for them.
That's awesome. Thanks so much. I'm so excited by these panelists. We chose these three because we thought that they all represented very unique places within the food system. And we're hoping that we could, although the connections between them might not be super obvious, because you think of innovation or you think of farming or you think of the digital space, obviously how these connections can start to find each other and benefit. So with that, I might just dive into our first question of what you see as the unique to the Bay Area's food system, and maybe that's the biggest opportunity or challenge, or a bit of both.
Well, I'll start about the unique. So I grew up in the Midwest, outside of Chicago, and when I moved here when I was 24 to the Bay Area, and this is the center of the food world. I mean, that's to me what's so unique about living in the Bay Area, is that full all year round growing season, people coming from all across the world who are interested in food and ag, incredible chefs and people who are innovative people in every single section of the supply chain, from different styles and business entities on the farming community to every step of the way. So I just feel like what is so unique about California and the Bay Area is just that it is such a innovative, creative place that has so much, that truly does have a an abundance of food opportunities, just by the nature of the environment. And I feel quite lucky to live here and get to be part of it all.
I'll piggyback off of that because I definitely agree with a lot of what you're saying. I mean, I think I mentioned I'm a child of diaspora. I moved around a lot. I was an Army brat. I don't know if people are familiar with that term, but moved every 2 years growing up. And even in my adult life, that was kind of true. But honestly, like in the Bay Area, just compared to different places where I lived, it is very different in feeling. I think that it definitely feels like a food hub. And I think the heart of it is, and what what I think about every day is the culture itself, the food culture in the Bay Area is specific to this place. You have not only all of these influences from all of the social movements with deep roots in the area and in California, but you also have, honestly, that influence from tech, which I worked in the Better For You brands in the Bay Area for years, and that direct influence from the tech culture is definitely alive and well, for better and worse. Deniable too. California has its unique culture that is honestly steeped in, the way that it was colonized. You have big ag. It's no coincidence that the big corporate consolidated form of ag really thrives in California. It's a direct historical descendant of what came before. And I think that unique food culture, it's that, two sides of the coin. You have all these wonderful things where you're pushing conversations forward, but you also get the blind spots and the pitfalls of those same things, because food systems, like every system, they're born from cultures. So in my mind, and I think a lot of people, especially working in cultural strategy spheres, talk about this regularly. If you're going to change a system, you need to look at the culture it's feeding from. There's a cook activist and artist named Jocelyn Jackson, who I think literally said almost that exact quote. She was talking about an installation that she had done where she made a tablescape for Philando Castile and the officer that killed him. I think his name was Geronimo Yanez. And she was asking the question to the audience: what cultures did they feed from to get them in that place? What culture did that officer feed from? So, when we're talking about the biggest opportunities, I think that's a great one. That's a great place to look. What are the narratives we're keeping alive? Who has the power? How do we change that?
I agree with everything that my co-panelists have said, and I'll just add that for me, what's unique about the Bay Area in particular is that, it really depends on like what lens we're looking at when we talk about the Bay. But from like a growing standpoint, I mean, we live in this incredibly amazing Mediterranean climate that allows for so many different types of things to be grown, different crops, different meat products, different value-added goods. And then you combine that with what I've noticed to be, and a lot of this is growing out of like the next generation of people that are doing work in like the tech sector or Silicon Valley, is that there's like a growing demand for people who care more about where their food is coming from, and they want a high quality of food, and coupling that with like this incredibly diverse and unique and cultured region. I grew up in Oakland, and the food availability there in terms of like what types of food I have access to is really impressive. But that's also a function of like, affordability and being able to have access to those foods. So I think discussions around, I mean, to me, what I would love to see is all of that being leveraged into this opportunity to overhaul the food system status quo as it is, and to create these alternative and collaborative approaches to doing so, because there's so much resources in the area. It's just, this kind of leads into the biggest challenge, which is like, how do we all navigate this capitalist system that we're in an ethical and equitable way, where we can like hold institutions and governments accountable, and change who some of the gatekeepers are and the rule makers are for the food system. Like, how can we elevate the people who are actually doing the work and have more agency in the process of determining like what the rules for the game are and who gets access. And so it's exciting to kind of be with you all in this space to like think about those things and talk about those things. And yeah, I think because there's so much resource availability in the Bay Area, we have a great and it's almost like opportunity is the word, but it's almost like a responsibility. We have like an imperative to do better with the food system here because we have more, and to make sure that that's done in an equitable way.
Great. I love what everyone has said. And I think that Ada, you captured it perfectly of that the idea that food communities and food systems are born from cultures. But what is unique about the Bay Area is that it almost epitomizes such a variety of cultures, and you have so many different cultures and communities depending on who you ask and which I guess areas that you occupy, which is I think what James was highlighting, and maybe would start this next question with you and invite you all to be in conversation about it, about how do you see current connections or disconnections within the Bay Area, and where is there value or opportunity to add value in working with people who aren't always considered part of your food community?
I can kick this off a little bit. Honestly, for both of you, I feel like when I think of food community, you know, KTA and FS6 are definitely part of that larger, we're all in the same ecosystem, the same community. Maybe we're doing different things, but largely, I'm pretty sure we work with some of the same people, if I'm honest. There's a lot of overlap. And of course, like, you know, there's different types of resourcing and skill building and, you know, help with access to capital and things. And, but at the end of the day, like we're all working towards the same goal, but with different approaches, I would argue, when you zoom out enough, I guess. Maybe like if you're just you know, regular person from Fruitvale or something walking around, it's not as obvious, but you know, I'm thinking of you know, all these farmers or growers, or even people who are starting businesses, entrepreneurial businesses in the Bay Area. They could all, like, we could all work with them to help build their cultural power and their influence, and, you know, basically make them visible and known.
I agree. I mean, we have worked with each other in different ways and different folks at each other's organizations. So I think we certainly are all working towards similar goals. And something that James said that really struck with me is, you know, all of us are working within the constraints and challenges of the capitalist system to try to create a more equitable and just existence within that for the people that we serve. And so I think a lot about how, you know, if these organizations are needed to kind of push back against like the potential of an unchecked corporate system. And I would think in terms of working with each other, you know, there's a lot of education that FS6 does with corporate partners to try to educate on the way in which that we view entrepreneurship and innovation and supporting entrepreneurs. And there's always so much work to be done on this. And I think that, you know, a lot of organizations the last couple of years are using the word democratizing democracy. And I think what we mean by that at Food System 6 is really a focus on food sovereignty, which is people owning the means and ends of their own production, and where food culture, food ownership stays within communities, and that allows them to be empowered through that way instead of the alternative, which is a lot of the corporate food systems that we experience a lot today.
I want to jump. Oh, sorry. Did you want to talk, James? I don't want to.
Go ahead. I can go
I just
after.
wanted, that reminded me, there's, I think it's actually a farmer who works with KTA, Rudy Jimenez from Green Thumbs Organics. He was, he spoke at an event of, for Real Food, Real Stories at our Story Slam this past year. And there, he had a quote that was literally to like, speaking to what you were saying, Perry, where he had this moment of realization in his life when he came to farm. He's a 4th generation farmer, but when he decided to become an organic farmer and start his own path in that direction, he realized that it was spiritual work that he was doing, and he wanted to help his community have access to that food that he grew up in the Central Valley farming, and he was asking the question, how can this place that produces so much abundance have such little access to that same food? And why are we letting corporations decide our stories for us? And I feel really strongly that that's beautiful to me. It really just captures the spirit of what I think, like you were saying, democratizing really means, like giving people the ability and the tools to take that power and make the story for themselves and their community.
I think broadly speaking, like everything is actually connected. And I think a lot of times we tend to think of ourselves, or we tend to think of the world as like a series of objects with boundaries and not as like the relationship between features. And I think the more we lean into kind of like realizing that everything is connected, maybe more so than we know, there's a lot of wisdom in shifting the paradigm from like, this is mine and this is yours, and more about like, what are our responsibilities to each other and what's best for like the planet and our communities. And the way that can manifest is through collaborations between these different entities, be they corporate or institutional or governmental, non-governmental. But I think broadly speaking, there's a ton of value in working with people that are outside of your food community, because everybody has a food community. I mean, there are many things that make us different in how we go about living our lives in the world, but everybody eats, and like everybody, like it has this shared thing that we do, that's eating and breathing, and like we all want to not breathe bad air, and we all want to eat healthy food, at least most of the time. And so in my line of work, a lot of times I will be mostly talking to like organic producers and growers, but it's really important that we don't limit the outreach of like who we get to talk to. I think conventional growers are now feeling globalization in a way that is making them say, oh, I wish I had done organic 10 years ago, because now I'm getting priced out of conventional growing. And so there's a lot of like land transition that's happening from conventional hands to organic, or breaking up larger farm parcels and making them more available to people with less capital who want to get into farming, who would like to do something that's organic and uses better sustainable growing practices. So just in that one sense alone of like the turnover of land access, it's important to bring in people that are not necessarily on the exact same side of the aisle as you are, as it relates to your food community. Yeah.
That's great. Somehow it's already 12:40. And I want to give chance for everyone to ask questions if they have. So maybe Gianna, if we spotlight and we can go back to the main room so that everyone can see each other. I love that the common philosophy is about this idea of democratization and not necessarily dependent on where you sit in the food chain. I think that that's such an important and valuable takeaway for the spirit of collaboration and power sharing. I haven't seen any questions come through in the chat, but if anyone does, would invite you to ask now, or if not, can also use some of our own, but we'll give it a couple seconds, and Any other lingering thoughts from Ada, Perry, or James while we wait on that too are very welcome. Cool. So what question from Mark, what one change to the Bay Area food system do you think would be the most impactful and achievable within the next 5 years? Great question, Mark.
I can take a stab at that question. This relates a little bit to a question that we might have had time for around, like, if I could wave my finger or a magic wand and change like one part of the food system, what would it be? And as it relates to your question, Mark, I would just say that if there was a way to overhaul the current incentive structure for large scale producers and the way that we label types of products, like right now, the impetus is on growers who are using the right practices to label things as using the right practices, where I think the dynamic should be flipped. And if something is pesticide heavy or genetically modified or uses extractive and unethical, methodology as it relates to animals, like that should be very explicit on the packaging, and that should be something that like de-incentivize consumers from purchasing those products and changing the incentive structure. I say all that acknowledging that there's a disparity in food prices, and we live at this kind of weird in point of like wanting to charge the most possible for well-grown, sustainably grown organic food, but fully recognizing that like a lot of the people who work on the farms to get that kind of quality can't afford that price. So it's complicated, but one thing that I think would be a huge thing would just be in changing incentive structures for both the large scale producers and for consumers.
At Food System 6, we're looking at a lot of different alternative entity models. So cooperative structures, profit sharing structures, employee ownership programs. So that to me is something that I'm really, that we're very active on as an organization. In our last 3 cohorts, we've had numerous companies that are doing alternative entity structures. And I do think that that over the next few years will continue to grow and will, I truly hope, have a ripple effect that creates just a much more equitable working system for people in food. The food system has been always a very difficult system for working people. Always, it has tried to extract the most amount of labor for the least amount of remuneration. So the least amount of pay. So any way that we can work towards creating a more equitable system in this way is what I'm interested in.
Want to echo all the sentiments from both James and Perry. From the food culture perspective, I think within 5 years, one of the things that I think we can make really serious inroads on is our narratives around the food system and food culture in general. Ideas like, care is the essence of labor, and all labor is essential. All workers are essential, skilled, and invaluable. And thinking about people in that way, rather than just the product of what they're doing, which is how things are structured now. So introducing that conversation and having that as the guardrails for talking about what it means to rethink or restructure how we value each other and how we value people and resources in our food system, I think is something that we can have inroads. I mean, food media is obsessed with California, so I don't see why we couldn't be a leader in that in half a decade. Other narratives too, but I feel like labor is probably, if I had to choose one, that would be the heart. And I think a lot of people are getting, I think people feel that, especially because of the pandemic. It's really highlighted the issue of what it means to be essential to our existence as a society, into full focus.
That's awesome. I love all of those answers, and agree with Gianna. This idea of reframing for care as the essence of labor is so profound. Maybe we have time for maybe one or two, or maybe even three more questions, but the next two are somewhat interrelated on this idea of organizations and roles within capitalism and how we can kind of navigate that. So Mariana asks, when working with white-led organizations, what are boundaries and what do you emphasize most in order to stay true to your organization's goals? And Natalie somewhat relatedly asks about the role of corporations, who's doing a good job in collaborating with food communities in an impactful way.
So I will just say, maybe touching a little bit on this topic, is that when we have there's a lot of accelerators that are like work with a lot of corporates, and will just kind of, you know, they say we want 10 upcycled food products, can you bring them to us? And there's a lot of people who will do that. Like, they have a question, they want it answered, they'll provide that service. I think it's called like accelerator service or something. That's not what we do. So when we have worked with different corporates, we have very explicit like terms at the onset that we are doing our work. They're investing in Food System 6's mission and our theory of change, our way of engaging with entrepreneurs, and that they can, and we're, you know, very transparent about it. This is what we do. Like, if you want to support us in this work, please do. And we'll provide a cohort that is exactly what we do. But we are not catering to the specific corporate needs that can in some ways be extractive of innovators' ideas. So I think part of the way of working with corporates, different organizations, is honestly just like a lot of transparency. Like, this is who we are. This is like our foundation. This is what we believe in. We hope you do too. And a really good partnership will be where you see where we come from and believe in this and want to be on board. And that's what I would say on that.
I'll jump in. Transparency definitely resonates with how I think about this broader question also, because with us, with Real Food, Real Stories, I think if I were to take my take on it, is the biggest challenge for us, especially over the years, has been not so much external pressures or demands, but it's more so representation and avoiding the pitfall of tokenization, because our mission is really around basically like shifting power about who is recognized, who's seen, and who has their voice and their work amplified within our food community. And I mean, this is something we're actively working on, but not, you know, being like, here's the one, you know, token person from this community or from this part of the food system, is something that's, you know, it's out there. We make, you know, if Whole Foods wants to do something with us, we're not going to, you know, trot somebody out to be that one person that represents whatever specific thing to fill a quota. But I think one of the things that Real Food, Real Stories is really doing internally, and it's also, you know, out there public, is we're doing taking a lot of accountability from our community, from our advisory board as well, to make sure that we're incorporating BIPOC voices, marginalized voices into not just like, oh, here's some storytellers, but designing the programs designed to give cultural power to the people working in the system. And it's a question for us, not so much of like, who is, sponsoring this, or how are people asking, but it's more like, how is this work? How do we go about this work in partnership with people, and not just like, popping someone on a screen and being like, look at this person. So it's really like digging in and being in collaboration and in community with people.
And I'll just say quickly that I think of that a lot in terms of like, does the inside of the organization look the same as the outside of the organization? Like if you were to turn the mirror in on your organization, is it actually walking the walk and talking the talk? Is it accountable to itself and to its, either clients or community or collaborators or partner stakeholders in like a very meaningful, non-tokenized way? It's every year, depending upon the month, there is an effort in concert by corporations to show that they care, that they're doing something. And you can almost tell what month of the year it is by how corporate advertising happens around different kind of normative issues in the community or at large that we deal with as a society. And, I just think there should be like a through line that you can draw from the impact in the community to it matching with a core value of an organization that is reinforced by the makeup of that organization. I mean, if you, in regards to like white-led organizations, if it's an entirely white-led organization that is working towards creating more equitable conditions for BIPOC folks in the farm world, like they need to change the board of directors and the ED and like people involved, like regardless of intention, regardless of like the work that may be being done, like on some level you have to have alignment with what your values are and what you're doing. And so like trying to do performative kind of efforts that are like a little theatrical in some ways, like only go so far without being super tangible. But I also don't want to like fault any good faith gestures that are made by organizations and institutions, because a lot of it involves like people doing deep learning and like taking their education outside of themselves and learning from other people and like going to trainings and doing workshops and like building their acumen around what equitable distribution of power actually looks like. So it's not like these corporations are good and these corporations are bad, although if we stay after, I can tell you all about the corporations that I think are bad. But I'm sure everybody can. But I'm just kidding. Yeah, so that's kind of what I think about that.
I just wanted to add to James, because I think you make so many good points, is that like I think when people want to talk the talk, walk the walk, whatever, they like have to do the foundational work first. Like if they don't change the internal organization to match what they want to do externally, but just have the promotion externally, it never makes any sense. So like there's like I think it's Young Farmers of America. I forgot their actual the name of the organization. It's something like that. But they've done a lot of really interesting work lately, but I think that they've done the work and then shared it. So I just wanted to add that. Young Farmers Coalition. Thank you. Yeah.
These are all so great. I am feeling so sad that there's only 5 minutes left and a plethora of fantastic questions in the chat, but maybe they will be fodder for future conversations. I'm just as like kind of a wrap up in attempts to put a bow on something that can inherently not have a bow on it in an hour's time. Any other, as we start to come to the conclusion of this and build off of what we were just talking about, any other thoughts on final, almost like calls to action, or what you think could be good ways for people to take this conversation forward and continue to democratize the food system.
I can go. I would say, if there was a call to action, it would be to pick maybe a farm or a local tribal community, maybe a nonprofit, some type of collaborative endeavor, and to support it in perpetuity. A lot of times we do like individual giving for something that's very short term, like a GoFundMe or something. And more, I think it's so much more important to do like I'm committing to give a certain amount of my income to this organization or this group forever because I believe in the work that they're doing. I mean, obviously you can always, if things change, you can decide not to, but a little bit as a part of your, every month as a part, as opposed to just doing like one off one time. I think, using consumer power responsibly is really important. And yeah, that's what I would say.
I'll just add with the consumer power piece that I have gained so much and loved ordering direct from farms, like getting my like core things from people. My olive oil is from one person who's in the Bay Area. My chocolate's from another person who I'm friends with. My beans are from another person. Like my meat is from another person. All of them are ordered direct, or I pick them up from them. And it is so wonderful to just have these core things in my pantry, in my refrigerator, just through relationships. So I would encourage that. And then I'm always encouraging people to start a cookbook club or a dinner gathering. I think that learning kitchen skills is a foundational piece to creating joy around food. And so that's my other plug.
I love the joy piece. And I also agree with the idea of, basically supporting in perpetuity your community. I would add that thinking about like how you can feed those relationships and really just be in community, not just as a consumer, but as somebody who who participates in and shapes the culture around you. I think having that orientation as a culture bearer yourself, not just like, it's not just people who do the work of getting you the food or, growing it. You're also part of the web in the community, and really lean into what it means to be part of that relationship. I think we tend to think of these things as interactions or exchanges, but they're really relationships. They go around in a circle. I would say it even, building on the whole kitchen skills and sort of supporting your local food producers and workers, just like talk to your neighbors or, whoever your friends about it a little bit more, make a whole thing of it, where you share who you're in community with, and just keep that something that's not that's intentional and not something that's passive and strictly in the realm of consumption all the time. I would say it's just a simple tweak.
I love that. Thank you so much. Thank you, Ada and James and Perry, for just like that wonderful reminder that like we are all connected, and hopefully this is like gonna keep going and we can, continue the conversation. And there's so much that we captured from today. So we're gonna definitely send out the recording, as well as like any more information about like how to stay involved with us. If you liked talking about this, you think we have more that we can connect on, please feel free to reach out to myself or Michaela, and then, connect with the amazing panelists here today. I'm just inspired by all of you. I know the virtual space is limiting, but I feel really inspired now to keep the great work going and keep the cultural work going. So thank you so much. And thank you to Michaela and Sakina as well for making this event possible. Yeah, appreciate you all and your thoughts. And that's all for today. Hope you all have a great rest of your afternoon, evening.